take a singer, you'll have to scrub floors for a living. I said, right, fine, well, I better go and start now.
Opera star Rita Hunter remembering advice from her teacher, Dame Eva Turner. And as she says, she's been scrubbing floors ever since. But she's also been singing to audiences all around the world. Fortunately for us, she's singing in Northampton on July the 1st, and we invited her into our studios to reveal a few more of her secrets to Arnold Peters for this Sunday's Turning Back the Years. Now, if you're expecting a stuffy, reserved musician, forget it. Rita Hunter, CBE, is, true to her Merseyside origins, outrageously funny, larger than life, and immensely talented. I mean, who else would arrive in a silver Bentley with a notice on the back saying, Diva on board? As well as telling us some wonderful stories, she allows us to include some of her singing too, so we get both sides of this remarkable woman. Rita Hunter, the opera star who sings for the world, sings and talks just for you, this Sunday at 5 o'clock, Turning Back the Years on BBC Northampton.
Arnold Peters, BBC Northampton.
Hello there. My guest this afternoon is one of the world's great dramatic sopranos. Her beginnings in Merseyside held little promise of the career to follow. After church hall pantomimes, she went on to train with Dame Eva Turner, join the Sadler's Wells Opera Company, sing the first ever ring cycle of Wagner in English, and then conquer the world's opera houses with her performances in the great classic roles. She was honoured with the CBE for her services to opera, and she holds other honours and degrees. She made her home in Australia in the 80s, but still travels the world in recitals, concerts, and operas. She is Rita Hunter. Rita, welcome. Lovely to see you.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Now then, you were born on Merseyside, but you're not a Scouse. Why not?
No. Scousers are Liverpudlians.
Ah.
I was born on what they call the posh side of the Mersey. It's not really. The Cheshire side. I was born in Wallasey, so therefore I am a Cheshire cat.
Oh, right.
And being a Leo, I can say meow.
Nice one.
But I do get very Scouse when I'm annoyed.
Right,
Yeah,
fair
yes.
enough.
And when I have a little tantrum, my husband usually says, come on now, Scouse, have a cup of tea and calm down.
Right. Who calls you Scouse?
My husband sometimes. Yes.
Be a bit daring to call you that, I should think.
Well, I call him a Welsh.
I see. Right. That's fair enough. And what about memories as a child, the ferry boat noises on the river?
Oh, yes. Well, I mean, where I was born was right opposite the Poulton Dock. And the big treat was going down to the docks to see what boats had come in that week. And, you'd see such and such from Hamburg and such from whatever. And it was, looking back on it, it was strange to think that all those strange names on the boats, these strange places, most of them I've been to now.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
with the exception of
exciting.
the South African ones, yes.
Lovely.
Yeah.
I remember that you, in your book, you mentioned the fact footlights. Suddenly you came up with this line, footlights.
Well, this is true. This is really...
Out of nowhere.
I was very young then. I mean, I don't remember it at all. I do remember sitting on my grandfather's knee. And I remember what I used to do. We had this great horsehair chair, which was leather, and I had the studs all round. And I had chalks. And I used to chalk the little studs different colours.
Really?
And I remember my mother told me that I said, look, Mummy, this is footlights. And, my grandfather said, in the name of God, where did she get that from? Because, we weren't the theatrical family. My aunt was in the theatre as a dancer in a dancing troupe, but I'd never been exposed to that sort of thing, and it was really quite early on. I must have been before I went to school even.
3 or 4?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
I know grandmother sang though, didn't she?
Grandma sang, yes, she did.
Yes.
I don't remember her. She died before I was born. But
your mother inherited that, I believe.
She did. She had a very high
singer.
soprano voice. Yes. Really high. Somewhere amongst my archives there's a reel-to-reel tape with her and I singing on it, with her playing the mandolin.
Yes, and she played mandolin.
Yes.
And father was also around music because he played harmonium and bugle, didn't he?
He did, yes. He played the bugle at the investiture of the Prince of Wales at
Did he
Carnarvon,
really?
the old Prince of Wales, yes.
Yes. Did he really?
Yes, and we've still got the bugle.
Yeah.
Which is ceremoniously polished every so often with brasso.
Oh, lovely. But you made a very dramatic entrance into the world, didn't you?
Oh,
in a
yeah.
thunderstorm.
Absolutely, yes.
Mm.
And my mother almost died. I was born blue. I suppose I was one of the first blue babies. They tried to save my mother's life, and they just sort of chucked me in a corner because I was obviously dead.
Really?
And the doctor blew down my nose and throat and things like that. They said, this baby's got to live because, you know, my mother had been married 20 years. And she went to the doctor. She had travel sickness, she thought. And they said, no. He said, Lassie said, you're pregnant. And she said, how far gone on am I? And he said, you've got 6 weeks to go. So
Good heavens.
my mother told me afterwards that she remembered feeling, going home and feeling very guilty that they'd been caught out doing it at that age.
Oh, I think on that note we must pause for some music. Can we pause for first choice of music,
Sure.
please?
Well, I'd like to, I know some divas play all their own music. I'm going to play a couple of mine. I'd like you to play Ritorno Vincitor, because it's the first operatic aria I ever learned, and probably the first piece that my mother didn't teach me, because it was a bit beyond her mandolin fingers.
Part of Ritorno Vincitor from Aida, sung by Rita Hunter. So, let's move away from that now, from music, back to your early days. You had an interest in that sort of thing, and music, and I think that later on, I know that there was a minstrel troupe you formed, or
Yes.
your father formed,
Yes.
but before that, you auditioned, you went to a talent contest, didn't you, and you won a heat.
Well, what actually happened was that my father was the chairman of the local pantomime society, and he went. The previous year, he'd made the Cinderella coach because his sergeant in the Home Guard was with the pantomime society. And they needed a Cinderella coach, and he built it in our back bedroom. And he nicked all the fairy lights off the Christmas tree to put around the frame of the window.
Yes.
And the following year, when they held auditions, my father said to my mother, "Oh, you can come along to the auditions. It'd be just like a concert." He said, "Pass the evening away, better than listening to the radio." Sorry about that, BBC. And off we went, and there was all these kids, singing away. And I, again, must have thought I could do as well as that, or if not better. And I disappeared and went round the back of the stage and asked the woman if she could play this particular song, which was an old music hall song. And she said, "Yes, Chuck." She said, "What do you want?" I said, "A chorus and verse and a chorus, please." And because when my father looked up, the next little rat on the stage was me, you see.
How old were you then?
I was just 7.5. And there was a big row on the way home because my mother hadn't had full control of her daughter, you see. But we had a letter then saying that I'd been offered a speciality at the end of the... they put me in the dancing troupe, but the speciality at the end, while they changed the sets for the for the full ballroom scene, and I sang "On the Good Ship Yaki Hiki Doola," dressed as a pirate.
And was that the Gertie Gitana song, was it?
Yeah,
Yes.
Silver Bell, yes.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Yes.
That is one that my mother taught me. Yes.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And so from then you never looked back, really, did you? Because
Never ever wanted to do anything else. No.
you played in Dick Whittington, didn't you? What did you
Yes,
play in Dick
I was
Whittington?
principal boy on tour in the north of England in Goldilocks and the Three Bears.
Yeah.
I was Robin the strolling minstrel. I mean, I've been strolling around the world ever since. And that was sort of Scunthorpe, Rotherham, Huddersfield, Halifax, all those places.
But before that, there was the Blitz, wasn't there, on Liverpool?
Oh, yes.
And there was landmines and all sorts of things. And I think one morning you woke up to find no windows in your house.
No windows in the house, and my father went to school, and my mother was buttoning up they called them Liberty bodices.
Yes.
And Dad came back down the yard. He says, "Forget about that. There's no school to go to." And I thought, "Whoopee!" It's wonderful.
Yeah.
Hated school, but I eventually had to be evacuated, like most of the kids. But my mother came with me, which was a bit of a luxury.
Nice. And you showed an interest not only in singing, though, but also, I think, did you want to learn the piano? Because you did learn the piano.
Yes, I did.
didn't
Yes. I used to play by ear, and my mother thought, "Oh, she's obviously got a musical ear," and sent me to the local, at the end of the block, to the local lady who was teaching piano, shilling a lesson. And I then found that I didn't really like playing the piano because it was very hard trying to follow the music and the scales. And when she used to go out to make a cup of tea, I'd play by ear, and I used to think she didn't know. You see, but of course she knew. And she obviously said to my father, "You're wasting my time and your money. Forget about it." But she did teach me to read music, so all was not lost.
Very useful.
Yes,
very
absolutely.
Useful, yeah. And you also had singing lessons, didn't you, later on?
Yes, I did. Yes, but as a child, you see, I was a sickly child, and I was what they call now a whinger. I was always crying, always screaming my lungs out. And now I think that probably God was preparing my lungs for Wagner or something.
You never know. You never know.
Yeah.
Some more music, please.
Well, I'd like you to play the Diamond Aria from Tales of Hoffmann. And I hope you can find Bruce Dargaville singing it, because he's a patriot friend of my husband's. He's dead now, sadly, a baritone. But he was a baritone that had almost no end to the top of his voice. And he'd sing the prologue from Pagliacci, and he'd also sing on with the Motley. It was just incredible that a baritone could encompass such a range. And my husband used to talk about him, and I thought, oh, that's, it's a Welshman talking, tenor talking, a couple of pints of beer, they'll tell you anything.
Yeah.
And eventually this guy came to the Patio Pavilion where I was singing in Swansea, and I met him. A tall, marvellous, good-looking man, something like yourself, really tall, grey-haired, beautiful. And deep voice, he said, "Hello, Rita Bach." It was wonderful. And I fell from hook, line and sinker. And he gave me a tape which he'd made at the age of 73. And I went back and played it, and I thought, there's singers today, Cardiff Singer of the World, eat your heart out. I mean, this man was 73 when he made the tape, and it was just incredible.
Incredible.
Absolutely, yeah.
part of the Diamond aria from the film version of the Tales of Hoffmann. Wonderful voice.
It is indeed. Yeah.
Lovely music. Right. Now then, let's move on. Gilbert and Sullivan raised their heads, didn't they?
At school, yes.
Yes.
My choir master, he was a baritone who sang with the Liverpool Grand Opera Company, and he organised the Wallasey Children's Choir, and he decided to combine the boy and girl choirs in the school and do HMS Pinafore. So he put on HMS Pinafore, which the headmistress was disgusted with because she thought we were all going to hell and perdition, because, you know, the doors between the boys' school and the girls' school had been opened. My dear, it was so shocking.
Oh,
And
gosh.
she used to supervise all the rehearsals. She'd stand there with this prune face, you know. And I thought it was absolutely dreadful. And she'd say to my father at the parent-teachers meetings, "Oh, Mr. Hunter, your daughter is so noisy." And he'd say, "Well, where is she noisy, Miss Russell?" And she'd say, "In the playground, Mr. Hunter." He said, "Well, that's the place to be noisy, Miss Hunter." But that's what started the opera, really, was Harry Bergen. And eventually I used to go to Harry's in West Derby for Saturday morning lessons. And that's when I started singing opera.
That was real serious. Yes.
Absolutely, yes. And of course Harry was marvellous because the kids who were interested and or who could afford, he used to organise trips to the Empire or the Royal Court. When the Doyley Cart came, or the Empire Theatre had the Covent Garden. I remember going to see Tristan.
Oh, right.
And he really fostered an interest in opera with the kids.
What was your first reaction when you saw opera for the first time as a schoolgirl?
Well, now I thought the Cavalleria Rusticana and Pagliacci was great fun, and that seemed to be more along the lines of what I might, God help me, end up doing. When I went to see the Tristan, I thought, I was Kirsten Flagstad, and I thought, it's wonderful, but it was very long. I thought, oh, you know, but she seemed like a goddess on the stage, and I really didn't think that I would ever be fit to do those roles.
But you had a feeling you liked to try.
No, I really thought, you know, be content with what the Italian bit, you know, and I've always thought of myself as an Italian at soprano. I came along to do the Ring with the English National Opera, and my career took off then, because at that time, really, the only soprano singing the Ring Wagnerian operas was Birgit Nielsen. And I think the places like the Metropolitan Opera in New York thought of me as a cut-price Birgit Nielsen. And I understudied her for many seasons there. And she was a great colleague to work with. I learnt a lot from Birgit, not the least of which was learning how to get your own back on a conduct without offending him.
Nice one.
Absolutely, yes, yes.
I think that's a good point to pause for some more music. May we, please?
Yes. It's got really nothing to do with opera, but my mother was what I call a military band groupie, because my dad was in the Royal Naval Volunteer Reserve Band, and she used to march after the band on Sundays. And so I've always liked military bands, and I'd like you to play any military band, and maybe with the Graham Thorpe Colliery Band, which is conducted by Frank Renton, who's conducting the operas this week in Northampton.
the Grimethorpe Colliery Band, conducted by Frank Renton. This is Arnold Peters, and my guest this week is the world-famous opera singer Rita Hunter, and this is BBC Northampton. Now, let's move on. First professional job. You decided to go professional, didn't you, eventually?
Yes. First professional job was principal boy in pantomime. Then I went into musical comedy in The Chocolate Soldier as a chorister, and Gay Rosalinda, which is a polluted version of Fledermaus. My first opera job was as a chorister. I joined the Sadler's Wells on my 21st birthday.
You auditioned?
I auditioned, yes.
Was it frightening, your first audition like that?
No, I remember I sang Dove Sono, I think. Either Dove Sono or Porge Amor, and the Mimi aria. Neither of which roles I've done since, incidentally.
But quite seriously, I mean, was it daunting at all to you? I mean, I know you've been doing some things, but Covent Garden...
No, it was only daunting in the fact that I desperately wanted to work in opera. I wasn't afraid, I just wanted to... And I was quite happy with... I was secure in what I'd learned to do for the audition. And I first actually sang... It was a very crafty dinner party arranged by a lady called Lady Sanderson, who also got Norman Tucker at the dinner party. And of course she also had a grand piano in her drawing room, would you believe?
Just conveniently.
Just like that. And little Rita got up, and I can't remember what I sang. And Norman Tucker said, "You must come along and audition for us." And I thought, went away and thought, oh yes, well, I've heard all that before. And sure enough, I was invited, and then I got to sing on Sadler's Wells stage. And I think the excitement of singing my party pieces on Sadler's Wells stage overcame any nerves that I might have had.
Great. Excitement.
Absolutely.
Adrenaline was going.
Yeah.
Lovely. Because auditions can be nasty, can't they? They can be.
Well, it's the only job I've actually gotten from an audition. I was... I had my arm twisted into doing an audition for the Welsh National Opera, which was a bit stupid, really, by a previous manager, because I'd already sung Elsa in Lohengrin, and I thought, and I'd sung Bertha in The Barber. I thought, why do I have to audition for the Welsh National? I've already done one very monumental role with them, with Lohengrin. And again, I got nothing, and it wasn't until the whole of the Welsh management changed that they did the Turandot in '79. So there was like almost a 10-year gap between the audition and the performances.
Long time waiting for the phone to ring.
Absolutely, yes. Yes.
Oh, yes, right. How about the Carl Rosa? You worked with him, didn't you, at one
Yes,
time?
I did. I stayed with the Sadler's Wells for 2 years as a chorister. And the guy that had sort of befriended me, another Renton actually, Edward Renton, was conducting with the Carl Rosa. And he said, you need to do some small roles. However small, you need to do them. And he said, I don't think you're going to get them at Sadler's Wells. You better be in a smaller company. And of course Mrs. Phillips was notorious for taking you on, saying, oh, I'll make you a star, you know, the usual rubbish.
Yes.
But we still had to nag a bit. And my first role was Inez in Trovatore. And it was the debut was in I can't remember the name of the hall. De Montfort Hall in Leicester, would it be?
De Montfort, yes.
Well, there we are.
Yes.
And I was resting in the afternoon, and the bed was sort of wobbling around. There'd been an earthquake.
Really?
Probably the only one recorded in the Midlands ever. It had to be the day of my debut. So it was peculiar, yes.
So thunderstorms and earthquakes following around, don't they? Oh dear. You actually, of course, came to Northampton with the Carl Rosa Company.
Oh, many times, yes.
Yes.
Once a year, yes.
They were regular visitors here.
Absolutely, I was with them at least 6 years, so yes.
Some more music, please.
Yes, well, I think the next piece I'd like to choose would be the prelude to Wagner's Lohengrin. I sang the Lohengrin for the Welsh National Opera, but it's the most exquisite piece of music. And if you don't weep during this, there's no tears left in you.
part of the prelude to Wagner's Lohengrin.
It's something that I wouldn't really like to have to sing immediately after. It upsets you a bit.
Yes.
Yes.
Do you, when you're sitting in your dressing room, it just brings a picture to my mind, listening on the tannoy, does it affect you then if you're...
Yes, it does. It does. Yes.
The mood?
Yeah. One of the pieces we're doing in Northampton is the Slaves Chorus from Nabucco. I think it's absolutely wonderful. Until a friend of mine died and his parents asked for it to be played at the funeral, and it destroys me now.
Of course, yes.
And my daughter can't listen to it either, because it,
Mm.
you know, because he died in Australia and he was a Welshman, and the thought of the words of the Slaves Chorus, you know, oh my country, you know, he wasn't in his country and he wasn't buried in his country either.
No.
So you know, it does upset you.
Association of memories and ideas.
Sure,
Mm.
yes.
Right. Now, then, Dame Eva Turner.
Mm.
Wonderful lady. A diva.
A diva, an absolute diva. Terrible clash of personalities, I fear.
Really?
Yeah.
Mm.
She was a bit of
Autocrat?
I found her very rude to other people, and I couldn't handle that. I could handle her being rude to me in a way, because I think when you're a young singer, you have to put up with a certain bit of whip cracking.
Mm.
You know, you have to be told you're wrong.
Mm.
But you know, for instance, her secretary would come in with coffee, and she'd put it down on the table, and the secretary would say, "Oh, I did enjoy that last thing you sang, Miss Hunter." And Eva would say, "Take no notice of it, she doesn't know what she's talking about." And I thought that was terribly rude.
Yes, it was.
She was being rude to me, which I didn't mind, but I did think, I thought
Yes.
I'd been brought up a little better than that. You know?
I see, yes.
Yeah, that sort
yes,
of thing.
very
I
much.
couldn't
Keep
take.
your place, mind
Absolutely,
what you're doing.
yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Couldn't take that at all.
Oh,
Because
dear.
I thought, well, I might only have been a boilermaker's daughter, but I think I could have conducted myself a bit better than that.
But helpful.
Not really. She was to
Really?
a great many singers. She and I simply did not hit it off.
Incredible.
And I had a grant from the Countess of Munster Trust to study with her for 6 months. And at the end of the 6 months, I was really glad. And I was offered another 6 months study. I said, not to go to Eva. I can't take it. And on the last day of lessons, she said, "Well, my dear, you'll never make a singer. You'll have to scrub floors for a living." I said, "Right, fine. Well, I better go and start now." So it really was a very peculiar, very odd relationship.
Very strange.
But, I mean, I had the feeling that she would have loved me to have broken down and sobbed in front of her, you know. And a lot of other singers who went to her would say, "I'm not going to cry in front of her," you know. And we often used to go home and cry at home, you know. But maybe that was her method of, I don't know.
Breaking you down, then building you up.
I couldn't. I thought, how can I sing when I'm unhappy? How can you sing when you're unhappy?
Well, you can't. No.
It should be the happiest thing in ever.
That's right.
Even though you're learning and you're maybe doing things wrong and you're told you're doing things wrong, it should still be something
But the
happy.
actual creative
It's a joyous
thing.
thing.
Yes, the joyous thing.
Absolutely.
Yes.
But I used to walk in there with dread every lesson. I thought, this is ridiculous.
Definitely not good
No.
to carry on.
No.
Now then, when did you meet your dear husband, John? Was that
John,
in England? Or
that was with the Carl Rosa.
With
We
the Carl
both
Rosa?
joined on the same day.
Did you really?
Yes, we
I
did.
didn't know that.
Yes.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah. Well, yeah, he thought I was frightfully big-headed, and I thought of a typical tenor. I can say typical tenor, you see, because I married one.
Yes. Yeah.
He was mad about voices, absolutely crazy about voices, and he said, "Well, what do you sing then?" So I said, "Masked Ball aria, Questa Regia, Countess's aria." "Well, rubbish," he said. "There's no soprano on earth. He can sing all them." He said, "Not well, anyway." And he got up my nose a bit and
Really?
went on and on and on, and everything. He said, "I bet you don't do so and so." I said, "Yeah." You know, I'd pull it out of my music case to prove it, you know, with all the marks written on it, you know. And we actually, eventually, he annoyed me so much, we hired a hall one afternoon, and we got a friend of ours to play the piano. And I just sang everything in my music case.
Oh, lovely.
And he sat there, and his jaw dropped lower and lower and lower.
Oh,
and at the end, I said, "Would you like to sing the duet with me from Cab to finish off the afternoon? We've got a few minutes left, you know." And he did, and walked out.
That's lovely.
And he didn't speak to me for about a week.
Oh, gosh.
And he'd gone home and said to his roommate, "I've just heard the greatest soprano voice I've ever heard. But he said, she's going to burn herself out because she's singing all this stuff. He said, she needs somebody to put some reins on her and say, now, oi, direct your talents in either one way or the other. And whilst I thought he wasn't going to ever speak to me again, he was actually mulling over the rest of his life, in point of fact. And he asked me to learn the Desdemona Othello duet. I thought, cheeky, it's the one thing I didn't know, right, fine. So I learnt that overnight. Absolutely learnt that overnight. We sort of hit it off from there. But he just thought I was frightfully big-headed and very sure of myself, and he was convinced I'd been married before and divorced, which wasn't true. Very peculiar, yeah.
So it was a rocky start, but he's been very happy since.
Yes, absolutely, yes.
You married in 1961, didn't
That's
you?
right, yes.
Yes. Lovely.
My bloody Welshman, as I call him.
I think another piece of music may we have?
Of course. Well, apropos husbands and tenors, I'd like to hear the Verdi Requiem in Jamisco with Gili, who's my favourite tenor of all time.
In Jamisco tanquam raus, pulparubat vultus maus, supplicarti,
Part of In Jamisco from Verdi's Requiem, sung by Gili.
Yes.
The magic voice.
Absolutely, yes.
Right. So, having had that little comment on your husband, we'll move on, maybe.
Not very tactful, was it?
No, not all. It's all right. It's all right. Now then, very important event, wasn't it? Your daughter, Marwen?
Yes.
It's a lovely name.
Myron, yes.
What does it mean?
White
Marwen?
Mary.
Pardon?
White Mary.
White Mary.
Yes.
Oh, lovely.
She was born in a snowstorm, so.
Again, the
Not
weather.
literally in the snow, but
no,
it was
weather.
snowing.
Yes.
Yes.
Right. So, daughter was born in 1967. You had to take a little while off, obviously.
Yes, well, I'd been doing a lot of roles that I didn't enjoy. A lot of mezzo roles. And people were beginning to think I was a mezzo, but I've always had a good bottom register, and this, I think, fooled them. In fact, in a way, it fooled my husband to start with, because the break in my voice, I had problems with an A, which is really a peculiar. He began to think she's a mezzo, a short mezzo, who can't go beyond an A.
Moving from the head to chest.
Yeah, but once I got over the A, the B, the C, and the D, there was no problem. It was just the A. So that was one sort of thing that fooled him. And then we had the problems with people giving me the mezzo roles because they thought I was a mezzo, and I was bitterly unhappy. And I nagged, and in the end they actually sacked me. Settlers will sack me.
Really?
They made me redundant. And I went off for 2 years, and I got pregnant. And I thought, because we wanted a child, and every time we thought going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, no, you're missing his centre in the Flying Dutchman then, and this went on and on and on,
Yes, that's right.
Yep.
That's right. Yeah.
So it was a good chance, and we had. I wanted a girl, and I got a girl.
Oh, lovely.
But whilst just halfway through my pregnancy, I was asked to sing Leonora in Trovatore. I thought, whoopee, wonderful. But then I thought, well, I'm quite happy the way I am, being a mum. And we had this enormous fight in the hospital because by the time my daughter was born, there was about 2 or 3 months left before the performances. And they were obviously getting restive. They wanted a contract signed. And my husband brought the contract into the hospital. We had this enormous fight. I said, no, not going to. That's it. Not going to sing anymore. And, you know, the matron came and she said, Mr. Thomas, you're going to fight like this. I'm going to stop all these extra visitings. So I scribbled it and threw it at him, you see. I said, because I was convinced after not singing a note for 2 years that I'd be absolutely ghastly. And I came out of hospital, and about a week after, he got a pianist round and made me stand up and sing Leonora. Well, I'd had a cesarean, and of course, to my horror, there was nothing wrong with the voice at all. The only thing that was wrong was the support because of the operation and being pregnant, you see.
Yeah.
And, you know, he's sort of leaning against the door, looking with that know-it-all look on his face. Oh, I could kill you. I really could kill you, you Welsh sod. And I couldn't object, you see. I couldn't, you know, he wasn't going to say, come off the stage, it's rotten, because it wasn't, you see.
No, it was good.
So there I was up to my neck in it again.
Mm. And then came Brunhilde, did it?
Yes. Actually, I was asked to sing Brunhilde when I was pushing my daughter in the pram round the gardens. Stephen Arnold came up to me and said I should go in and pick up a score because he had a role for me in the Valkyrie. And of course, having the history of all the mezzo roles, I said, which one's Schwertleiter, which, you know, is the lowest one of the lot. And he said, no, Brunhilde, exactly. I said, oh, well, I paid absolutely no attention to him at all. Went home and left the pram downstairs because I still couldn't lift the pram up the stairs. Carried the baby up. My husband said, do you see anybody wearing it? I said, oh, Stephen Arnold. Oh, what did he want? I said, oh, sing something in the Valkyrie Brunhilde or something. I said, rubbish. And, you know, my husband and my mother both looked at each other with that sort of, ooh, you know. And I was totally absorbed in the nappies, the bottles and everything.
Yes.
And they rang me up and said, you've got to go and get the score. And I very reluctantly did not want to bother.
Really?
And went in and had some coaching with Tom Hammond. I thought, oh, I quite like this, yeah. You know, little realising.
Can't be bad.
You know, the whole career changed off on another track.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible. That's isn't it wonderful how things happen like that?
Yeah.
And suddenly, you know.
I mean, I often think, what would have happened if I'd refused? But now I know. I mean, no, my husband said, well, I don't think he would have let me refuse, you see.
Mm. And then that led to singing the complete cycle in
Oh,
English.
sure.
Yeah.
There was problems then, you know. I said, well, how can I have a full-time career? You know, you're singing in the chorus as well. What about the baby? He said, look, you have the career. He said, I'll look after the baby. And he became one of the first reverse role fathers, you know.
Some more music, please.
Well, I'd like to hear Scott Joplin's The Entertainer. This is really a bit of a joke on a critic. I had to do a recital once without programmes being printed, and I had to announce each item, and as is my wont, I made funny comments in between when there were things that I wouldn't normally sing. And the critic said, oh, well, of course, you know, she obviously now just sees herself as just an entertainer. And of course, what are we but entertainers, you know? Radio announcers, we're all entertainers to a certain extent. And my daughter bought me a little music box, which when I get mad, I can turn it because it plays the entertainer. Da 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 da. And my daughter bought me a little music box, which when I get mad, I can turn it because it plays the entertainer. Da 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 da.
Scott Joplin's The Entertainer. Great foot tappy music, isn't it?
Absolutely, yes, it's wonderful.
Do you relax with foot tappy music at all?
Oh, yes, I mean, I quite like the Village People. I mean, I shocked the ABC in Sydney by asking them to play In the Navy, da-da-dum-ba-ba-ba-ba, in the Navy. And, all the ABC's eyes went, their eyebrows shot right to the back of their heads. I like it,
Why not?
Why not?
If music's good, it's
That's
good,
right.
isn't it?
That's right.
Right. So, the complete cycle, The Ring, in English, and then the doors to the world opened, didn't they?
Literally, yes, literally. And, we had people writing in papers saying, where's this girl been? And my answer to that was, I've been here for 15 years and nobody took any notice.
Yes, but they did
And
then.
you see, I hadn't just sung the mezzo roles. I sung roles like Odebella in Attila, Leonora Trovatore, Center in The Flying Dutchman. So they weren't, Elsa Lohengrin, they weren't small roles.
No.
And it seemed very strange to me that suddenly, just because I was singing Brunhilde, they all went, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And what was the next thing that happened? You had a contract with Sadler's Wells then again, did you? Or did you go overseas straight away?
Well, I sang most of the first lot of the Valkyrie performances as a guest artist with the, which had now become the English National Opera. Sadler's Wells, English National Opera. Then I started doing my first Donna Annas. And then I was asked to sing at the Met in New York, Valkyrie.
Great.
And I was busy learning Valkyrie in German whilst I was learning Götterdämmerung in English,
The mind boggles.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yes.
Well, was that your first visit to the Met?
Yes.
What was your
It wasn't
impression?
my first visit overseas. My
No.
first job overseas had been doing a Liszt Missa Solemnis with the Berlin Radio. But this was my first operatic engagement.
Yeah, in New York?
Yes.
What was it like?
Terrifying. It's such an enormous house. I mean, the curtain goes up and it goes back for 10 miles, And the conductor, Erich Leinsdorf, is a really very hard taskmaster. It used to annoy me that he came out of the pit at the end of, 5 and a bit hours, and we'd all be dripping with sweat and totally exhausted. This man would come on smelling of brute and with no perspiration. The hair was slicked back as if he'd done nothing all night.
Yes.
I couldn't understand it.
Couldn't believe it.
No.
You all hated him for that.
Well, the first performance I sang was the Valkyrie, and really all I remember about it was singing the battle cry. And then all of a sudden I seemed to be singing Auf dein Gebot, which is the last thing she sings. And I thought, where did the last... It
just went.
I don't remember it. And apparently in the middle of it, I'd been hoiked up to the photographer's office, her photographs taken in the long interval. I don't remember any of it.
No, you were just going through.
I'd gone, yes.
Yeah. Anyway, that was a great success. And then you went to Munich with Birgit Nielsen.
Yes, Birgit was sick, and as I say, I understudied Birgit in the Valkyrie, and also in Götterdämmerung, and she was ill for a Valkyrie, and she said, "Get Rita," which was wonderful of her.
Yeah.
I went over there and I picked up the phone to say hello, and she said, "Hello, darling." I said, "Oh my God!" I said, "You sound like Hunding." "And noise is terrible." She said, "Oh." She really couldn't speak. She really had the most. She'd been singing on this cold for weeks and weeks, and it just got worse. And the next time I went to Munich was again for Birgit. It was to do Götterdämmerung. But what was so ironic about the Valkyrie that I sang for her, the Götterdämmerung I sang, her father had died. And she wasn't ill, her father had died. And I went away to sing this for her. And whilst I was there, my mother died. And my husband couldn't tell me till the performance was finished. So I spoke to her the following year when I went to the Met. I said, we have a very strange bond, Birgit. And we just sort of sat there and had a little cry.
Yes.
Yeah.
Incredible how these things happen just like that. And then Cavaliere Rusticana, that was at New York.
Yes, sang that at the Met.
And San Francisco too.
I sang Norma in San Francisco and at the Met, yes.
Yes.
Aida at the Met. Yeah.
Wonderful. And then you had an award, Doctor of Literature.
Oh yes, I was doctored in Warwick. We all had the most terrible dose of flu, and we were very, very sick, all three of us, driving up the motorway. And, if you look at my photographs now, the hat's sort of a little bit crooked, and my nose was as red as the gown, But I was my husband was very rude, actually. I was so honoured, and he said, Doctor of letters, he said, she can't spell at all. He said, I don't understand it.
Let's pause for some more music, can we?
Well, if we have time, I'd like to play the Puccini's Manalesco, the In quelle trine morbide, with Renata Tebaldi.
Part of Puccini's Manon Lescaut, sung by Renata Tebaldi. This is Arnold Peters, and my guest this week is Rita Hunter. Talking about preparation for an opera, I mean, the ring cycle is a pretty large canvas with lots of dots and many
It certainly
little
is.
words.
Yes, yes.
How long did it take you? Roughly.
We studied the Valkyrie for a year, and then they couldn't put it on because they had funding problems. So basically, we were 2 years doing that. Not because it took us 2 years to learn it,
No.
but the Götterdämmerung is the longest role in the ring cycle for the soprano, and I had learned a little bit of the first act duet with Reggie Goodall when we got bored learning the Norn, and I'd also done about 1.5 pages of the Immolation, which is at the end of Götterdämmerung. And when I came to learn Götterdämmerung in total, it was really like digging the Channel Tunnel to go from that bit that I knew at the beginning through to the end. And, there was that one glorious day when I finally, after turning out of 400 pages, finally turned a page and thought, oh, I know that. It was such a relief.
Yeah. And, of course, also, it's not just learning it yourself on your own, but rehearsing gradually with the others and building up and
we had a
back
night
over things.
for Götterdämmerung. We rehearsed for 9 weeks. It was a long schedule, and this is what's tiring. Often when you have long production rehearsals like that, but come the first night, it's almost a relief. You think, oh God, I don't have to rehearse tomorrow.
Going back and back.
But then Reggie used to say, would you come in tomorrow and we'll have a chat? And I think, I want to go to bed, stay in bed.
A few notes.
And, well, it used to be peculiar because you go in and you'd sit there expecting to be told dreadful things. You say, that was wonderful, you will do it like that again tomorrow night. And I say, yeah, if I can get some sleep, I will, But this is the problem. You get physically tired. Because Birgit always used to say that you needed comfy shoes to sing Wagner, and it's true, you do.
You're a long time on your feet.
Yes.
What about singing an English translation as opposed to singing the actual language it's written in? Is it harder, or sometimes perhaps?
Well, it's good for the audience because they can understand. But you have to remember that if anyone writes the Puccini or the Verdi or the Wagner writes a phrase with 5 notes in it and 5 words, often the English translator can't accomplish what he wants with 5 words and has to put a 6th word in, maybe even a 7th. So therefore you have to put extra notes in. So when you come back to do it in the original language, the German or the Italian, you have to remember not to, because sometimes if you're jet lagged too, particularly, you get to the end of that phrase and your mind says, there's 2 more notes here, where's the words?
Yes. Yes, and they aren't there.
They aren't there,
right.
Yes.
So let's move on. Australia. You went to sing Nabucco?
Yes, I went in 1978 and in 1980 to sing Nabucco.
Yeah.
2 6-week.
That was your first time?
Yep. Then I went in 1981 for a 6-month contract and was asked to stay on. Then I got a 3-year contract, and it's just, I'm still there.
Right.
Still there. We rented the house out for a while in Surrey, and at the end of 6 months ended up owing the house agent £10, which I thought was a bit futile. So we sold it and we bought a house in
Doesn't sound a very
Australia.
good idea.
No, it wasn't a very good idea.
Oh dear.
So we bought a house there.
Is that your main base at the moment?
Yes, that's my home. Yes, yes.
Lovely.
Well, I think home is where the family is. That's what works for me.
Mm.
Yeah.
What about your daughter, your family? Is she musical?
Yeah, she's got a lovely voice. I've got a tape of her singing. Everybody goes, "Oh, why doesn't she sing?" And she says, "No, I've seen too many dramas with my mother."
How do you and your dear husband, John Darnley Thomas, how do you relax?
Oh, just sitting in the swimming pool or lounging around the pool.
You don't dig in the garden or...
Oh, yes. We just trying to redesign this typical Australian bush garden full of bushy plants and rubbish. I've been buying rose bushes and hoping that they'll work in Australia. I try to... I've planted some daffodils and some irises, but I think it'll be, when they come out, it'll be too hot and then it'll come up and wilt immediately. But we've spent the last summer doing that.
And in 1985 or 86, I think it was, in this country, your book, Wait Till the Sun Shines, Nellie, was published.
Yes.
Why Nellie?
Nellie's my middle name.
Ah, right.
A lot of people said, "Oh, you've named yourself after Nellie Melba." I said, no. My middle name is Nellie, after Auntie Nellie, who looked after me when I was a kid.
Right, lovely.
Yeah. So I've already started writing book 2.
Right. Have you?
Yes.
Oh,
That's all the
lovely.
bits that people said they'd sue me if I put in the first one.
Sadly, time is beating us. May we have a final choice of music, please?
Yes, well, I'm going to be selfish now and ask you to play my recording of the Abscheuliche aria from Fidelio.
Es liegt, leid
part of the Absolische aria from Beethoven's Fidelio, sung by Rita Hunter. Rita, thank you so much for sharing your memories and turning back the years with me, your early days and your career, and indeed your family. And we wish you and your family all that is good now and in the future. And we look forward to seeing you next Thursday at the Derngate.
I'm looking forward to that too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So from me, Arnold Peters, until the same time next week, it's goodbye for now.
On 104.2 and 103.6 FM, this is BBC Northampton.